Good day everyone, Big Seven here, back for another NFL Draftstars video. This is going to be a little bit of a different type of video. I'm going to go through my results from main slate last week and my results today and my learnings from the season so far. This is my third season doing NFL Draftstars on a regular weekly basis. And yeah, even though it's my third season of doing it, I'm taking new learnings every day and striving to do better. So I'm going to go through last week's first, and basically what I did last week, I stacked a whole bunch of Jamal Williams. I stacked a whole bunch of Khalil Herbert. I made 18 teams in total, and these two featured in, I think, 16 of each team. Jamal Williams did really well. He was underpriced, performed to the price point. Khalil Herbert, a little bit disappointing. But I kind of look back at it, and the two other main options I was considering were Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. Both did decently well. Definitely, yeah, value for their price point. And just made me think last week after the competition ended, I was just far too narrow in how I built my teams. Like 16 with Khalil and 16 with Jamal. It just didn't leave a lot of, I guess, upside if either of those two failed. In other weeks, I definitely would have considered Josh Jacobs, who ended up top scoring. I think I picked him a bunch last week as well, so that makes it a little bit annoying. Same as Clyde, who I picked a lot of not last week, the week before. He ended up with another good performance. But I guess what I'm saying is I was way too condensed last week. 16 of 18 Jamal, 16 of 18 Khalil. I think 12 of my 18 teams were from that Buffalo-Baltimore game, which it did look like the standout option on the slate, but it didn't end up delivering. I know there was some weather involved, which I was sussing out up until the game started. Even still, even if it was perfect conditions, even though I wasn't too keen on the other options on the slate, just to have that much concentration from the one game, in hindsight, was definitely wrong. And the other thing that really screwed me over last week was the tight end position. I've got Dawson Knox in my best lineup. In 15 of my 18 teams, I decided to go with Mark Andrews because it was the clear matchup to target. It was the clear game to be looking at. He was the clear top option in terms of price point. And theoretically, he should have been the top scorer on the slate. But this is the NFL. This isn't theory. This is real life. And so, if I had have diversified, TJ Hawkinson was on my radar. Zach Ertz was on my radar, and he did okay, but not great. I wasn't picking Molly Cox. Zach Ertz, yeah, actually fairly decent. Who else was I considering? I think I had a little bit of Pitts, but he was underwhelming in my planning. But in the end, I just went heavy on Andrews, and that scuppered me. And as much as I can make predictions about how good players are going to score, it's not that simple. It's you can't just say, oh yeah, here are all the top projected players for this week, put them in the team together and expect to win, because you'll get great players in bad matchups still do well. You'll get good players in decent matchups overperform. You'll get bad players in amazing matchups that perform. And I think my focus so far has been too much on the great players and making sure that they have great matchups or at least good matchups, and then building my teams around that. Whereas in future going forward, I need to diversify more. In terms of the main slate this year, I'm down $570-ish. And yeah, I think this lack of real diversification is one of the main reasons why that is the case. And if I go to my single game contests, and looking at today, I had a really good result. It's the second contest I've won this year in single game. Granted, it's a quarter of the participants in there, but if I'm looking through how I'm building my single game lineups compared to my multi game, then there's a pretty sizable difference that needs to be addressed, I think. Because with these single game matchups, yes, I'm kind of building a base where I'll choose 3-4 players that I want to have involved in most of my lineups, but then I'm filling it out with speculative players that can do well depending on a role. So if I go and look at today's game, if I look at all my entries, the main four I was looking to go for: Cortland Sutton, number one Denver wide receiver. Denver Broncos against the Colts. Matt Ryan tends to take a lot of sacks, and the Colts without Jonathan Taylor I thought weren't going to do that well offensively, which ended up being true. Philip Lindsay at 1K, the Jonathan Taylor replacement. I thought he was just going to outperform his price point, which he did, but he isn't in the winning lineup. And then the other one I looked for, was Russell Wilson, just because I didn't think it was going to be a super high scoring slate. I did put a bet on the unders, but I put that in a multi, which ended up losing. But yeah, the moral of the story was I built my team around the four pillars in Wilson, in Lindsay, in Sutton, and the Broncos DST. And if I had have built every team with those four pillars in there, I wouldn't have won, because although Philip Lindsay did do well, there were other people that outperformed him. So yeah, I wasn't overly keen on Melvin Gordon, but I did pick him in a bunch because he was supposed to get that workhorse role. Mike Boone, he was someone I was a bit iffy about. I wasn't sure how much of the role he was. He was more of a speculative pick. And then Alec Pierce, who's in here, he broke out in a big way today. Ended up being the main target, as Pittman was mainly being shadowed by Pat Surtain. But yeah, if I think about how I would have built it for a main slate, I wouldn't have guys like Alec Pierce or Mike Boone in there. I would go, these guys are a bit too risky. I'll go with the safer, more proven guys, and I'm kind of missing that upside when I'm making my teams. So yes, I'm very happy to be winning today. It takes me up to about 1,200 in front on single game Draftstars events this year. But the main slate needs to pick up for me. And with that in mind, I'm going to go through pretty quickly this matchup. I'll go more in depth into it on the Sunday. But yeah, I need to diversify more. That's basically what I've taken out of my learnings. Even when you win, even when you have a big cash like I've got today, I'm still looking to improve, looking to move forward. And hopefully I can take a big cash in the main slate for a change. I don't even think I've finished top 100 in the main slate yet. And I think that's mainly because I'm going too narrow. Haven't been looking for speculative options. I've been going too safe. So I'm going to go through each game pretty quickly. Players that, So from here on out, I'm basically going to be looking to put, I'll say 4 different types of players in my lineups. Elite players, anytime, anywhere. You think of guys like Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Diggs. These guys are just at that level where they're basically matchup proof. I guess the best example I can think of at the top of my head is Jonathan Taylor against the Bills last year. A lot of people faded him. I think he was like 2 or 3% owned in Draftstars because he was an expensive price. Bills defense wasn't supposed to do well, and he goes and puts up a 40 because he's a talented player that's capable of putting up those scores anytime, anywhere. So your uber premium players, yes, it is nice for them to have a good matchup, but I'm comfortable picking them anytime, anywhere. Then you've got your, I guess I'll call them, I guess I'll call this group the elite players, but the next group, I'll talk about the great players. So, your Amon-Ra St. Browns, Deebo Samuel, Kirk, anyone in that 10 to 12K range. If they've got an okay matchup, it doesn't mean they're going to score an okay score. They're capable of going a range between, a really low score, but you just never know when one of these guys can smash, one of those average matchups. And if they do at this kind of price point, then you're laughing. So I guess probably the best example of this week. I mean, these are all pretty favorable matchups, to be honest. Let's go Chris Olave. Chris Olave against, although Seahawks is pretty, maybe not that. Terry McLaurin. He's a guy that hasn't scored that well this year. But Tennessee, they're a decent team defensively. I mean, they're not amazing, but they're not a bad team. Their offense, you can say, isn't great. But Tennessee, I could see them conceding, 10, 13 points this week as a defense, and then these Washington players are out of play. But is there anything stopping Washington from going 35, 40 points? Would it be really surprising if that happened? I'd say no. And so, it's not the best matchup. You've got, guys in here like Olave against Seahawks. Who else was there? AJ Brown against soft secondary for Arizona. Deebo Samuel against the Panthers. But Terry McLaurin, he's at a discount in an okay matchup. And yes, he could flop again, but this could be a spot where he smashes. And because he's a great player, but not in an amazing matchup, that's going under the radar. These are the players that I haven't been picking up this year where I have been picking them in the past. So I think picking a great player in an okay matchup is perfectly fine. And then the other spot to really look for, I guess the third category of players is your value range. Normally I'm looking to pick a value range player in either one of two situations, where the work role is going to be greatly increased. So I think of someone like Josh Reynolds last week. It was combined with a good matchup, but Detroit were missing Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark from their passing offense, which led Josh Reynolds to be the main guy. And he went and smashed it with a 21 points, and he's 6K again. With that in mind, if Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark are playing this week, then Josh Reynolds just becomes nothing, like a real periphery option. Yes, he put up a big score last week, but that was due to increased opportunity. So I am looking for guys that have a chance of increased production through increased opportunity. And the other time I'm really looking for cheap players is in the soft kind of matchups. So, for example, who would be the softest matchup on here? Houston against Jacksonville. So I think, Jacksonville can put up a good total this week. Likely to do well against Houston. And yes, Christian Kirk is a really outstanding option here at 11,500. But this kind of matchup brings guys like Zay Jones to the fore. You could go a Travis Etienne and hope he has a breakout game against a soft Houston defense. James Robinson even is an option this week. Who else is there? Saints would defend on injuries, but if Michael Thomas is out, which is expected, if Jarvis Landry is out, which I'm not sure about, then that gives a chance for someone like a Traquan Smith or Marquez Callaway to find the end zone a couple of times again in a soft matchup against the Seahawks. Who else would be value? Probably not Philly. San Fran against Carolina. Brandon Ayuk, the clear number 2 wide receiver in this offense. And yes, you probably do want to pick a bunch of Debo because as Carolina, and their defense is not terrible, but also not great. And um, San Fran could put a number of points on them. So the natural inclination is to go for that Debo type because he's got a good matchup. But someone like Brandon Ayuk coming in at 2,700 cheaper in what should be a good matchup for him. These are the kind of spots that I'm looking for when I'm looking for value. I'm looking for cheap player with either a good matchup or increased role. Can I think of it? Tampa Bay is a really good example of that this week because Mike Evans will be the clear number 1 wide receiver. If Chris Godwin was to miss out, then you've got Julio Jones, Russell Gage, and Brashad Perryman. If Godwin misses out, then Jones and Gage probably both see a ton of field time. If 2 of those guys are out, so for example, if Godwin and Jones are out, then I'm smashing Russell Gage. Not just because of the matchup, but because this is a game where he's a good chance to get a much improved workload. So, yeah, these are the things I'm looking to take forward. When building your lineup, I would say almost, mate, follow your gut. Don't be afraid to be different because if you are different, and your player that is different pops up, then that is your ticket to getting into a really good position to be able to win the slate. So hopefully this video helps you in some kind of way. I'll come back tomorrow, which will be Sunday, with another video, kind of with the breakdowns, how I've gone actually implementing this into practice. And yes, I am going to be tempted by guys. I'll be tempted by Jamal Williams and Khalil Herbert again because they are discounted and cheap for running backs with the increased role. But I'm going to try not to obsess over them too much this week like I did last week. Have a bit of variety in there. Put some King Henry in there. Put some Chubb in there. Put some McCaffrey in there probably. But yeah, those full breakdowns I'll bring to you on the Sunday. Until then, have fun building your teams, and I'll see you back here for the next video.